I was 24 when my world cracked open, the jagged edges of betrayal slicing through the life I thought I knew. My name is Anna, and at 28, I can still feel the weight of that day, the one where my promotion was supposed to be my triumph, but became the stage for my family's unraveling. I'd spent years clawing my way up at Harper and Stone, a marketing firm that chewed up ambition and spat out cynics. But I was different, or so I thought. I believed in loyalty, in family, in the idea that hard work would shield me from the kind of drama you read about on Reddit threads. I was wrong. That morning, I woke with a nervous buzz in my chest. The promotion to senior account manager was being announced at the company's quarterly meeting, and my name was on the list. I'd earned it. Late nights, scrapped weekends, campaigns that pulled in clients like moths to a flame. My boss, Claire, had hinted at it for weeks, her sharp eyes softening when she spoke to me, a rare thing in her world of clipped commands. I could already picture my parents' faces when I told them. Mum's proud tears, Dad's quiet nod, the one that meant more than words. My older sister, Lila, would probably roll her eyes but hug me anyway. Family was my anchor, the one constant in a life that demanded I keep proving myself. I dressed carefully that day, a navy blazer, crisp white blouse, heels that clicked with purpose. I wanted to look like the woman I was becoming, not the girl who'd started as an intern, fetching coffee and dodging office politics. The meeting was at noon, and by 11:30 I was in the conference room, my palms sweaty but my smile steady. Colleagues filed in, some offering quick nods, others avoiding my gaze. I didn't care. I was ready for this moment, ready to step into the light. Claire stood at the front, her presence commanding the room's attention. She ran through the usual updates, sales figures, new clients, before pausing, her lips curling into a rare smile. My heart pounded. This was it. She announced the promotions, and when she said my name, the room blurred. Applause rippled, but it felt distant, like I was underwater. I stood, my legs shaky, and thanked her, my voice steady despite the storm of pride and relief inside me. I was Anna, the girl who'd made it. But then I saw him. Mark, my fiancé, was there, leaning against the back wall. He hadn't told me he was coming. His presence should have warmed me, but something about his posture, arms crossed, jaw tight, set my nerves on edge. I brushed it off. He was probably just tired. We'd been planning our wedding, and stress had been creeping into our late night talks. I caught his eye and smiled, but he didn't smile back. Instead, he looked past me, his gaze locked on someone else. I followed his line of sight and my stomach dropped. Lila was there, standing near the door, her arms folded, her expression unreadable. My sister, who'd never once stepped foot in my office, was here, on the day of my promotion. My mind scrambled for reasons. Maybe she wanted to surprise me, to share in my moment. But the air between her and Mark felt wrong, heavy, like a secret I wasn't supposed to know. I tried to focus on Claire's closing remarks, but my eyes kept darting to them. Lila's hand brushed her hair back, a nervous tick I knew too well. Mark shifted, his eyes flickering to her, then away. The meeting ended, and people swarmed me with congratulations, their voices a dull roar. I thanked them, my smile mechanical, my mind racing. Why were they both here? Why hadn't they told me? I moved toward Mark, my heart thudding, but Lila reached him first. They exchanged a look. Not long, but long enough. It was the kind of look that carried weight, the kind that hid something. I stopped dead, my heels silent on the carpet, my triumph souring into something I couldn't name. And then Lila turned to me, her smile tight, her eyes guarded. She opened her mouth to speak, but before she could, Mark stepped forward. his voice low and urgent. Anna, we need to talk. My world tilted, and I knew in that splintered second that whatever came next would break me. I've always been the kind of person who notices the little things. The way a room smells after rain, the slight creak of a floorboard underfoot, the pitch of a laugh that's just a bit too high. That's why, when I heard Dana's giggle echoing through my apartment that afternoon, it stopped me cold. My sister's laugh isn't subtle, it's sharp, almost musical, the kind that demands attention. But it wasn't just the sound that gripped me, it was where it was coming from. My bedroom. I stood in the hallway, my work bag still slung over my shoulder, keys dangling in my hand. I'd come home early from the office, hoping to surprise Ethan with dinner. We'd been engaged for 6 months, and though wedding planning had been stressful, I still got butterflies thinking about building a life with him. But now, my stomach churned for a different reason. That giggle. It wasn't right. Dana wasn't supposed to be here. She had no reason to be in my home, let alone in my room. My heart started to race, each beat louder than the last, drowning out the rational voice in my head telling me it was nothing. Maybe she'd come over to borrow something. Maybe Ethan was just helping her with... What? What could possibly explain that playful, flirtatious tone in her laugh? I swallowed hard, my throat dry as I took a tentative step toward the bedroom door. It was half open, a sliver of light spilling into the dim hallway. I could hear muffled voices now. Dana's, light and teasing, and Ethan's, low and intimate. A tone I thought was reserved just for me. I wanted to turn around, to drop my bag, walk out, and pretend I'd never heard a thing. But my feet moved on their own, drawn by some masochistic need to know. The closer I got, the more distinct their words became. You're terrible, Dana giggled again, her voice dripping with something I couldn't ignore. Ethan's chuckle followed, lazy and warm. My chest tightened, a vice closing around my ribs. I pushed the door open just enough to see, and the world tilted under me. There they were, my sister and my fiancé, tangled in my bed. The sheets, our sheets, were rumpled around them, and the air was thick with a betrayal I could almost taste. Dana's hair spilled over the pillow, her face flushed with laughter, and Ethan's hand rested casually on her arm, as if this was normal, as if this wasn't the ultimate stab to my heart. I must have made a sound, a gasp, a choke, because they both froze, heads snapping toward me. Anna, Ethan stammered, sitting up, his face a mask of shock and guilt. Dana's eyes widened, but there was something else there too. A flicker of defiance, like she'd been caught but wasn't sorry. I couldn't speak. My tongue felt glued to the roof of my mouth, my mind a chaotic storm of hurt and rage. How long? How many times? Every shared laugh, every family dinner, every late-night phone call with my sister flashed through my mind, now tainted with suspicion. Get out, I finally whispered, my voice trembling but laced with a coldness I didn't recognize. Ethan started to stand, pulling the sheet around him like some pathetic shield. Anna, I can explain, he began, but I cut him off with a glare so sharp, I'm surprised it didn't draw blood. I said, get out, both of you. Dana didn't move at first, just stared at me, lips parted as if she might argue, but then she slid out of bed, grabbing her clothes with an infuriating calm. I turned away, unable to watch them scramble to cover their shame. My hands shook as I gripped the door frame, the wood biting into my palm. I heard them dressing, the rustle of fabric like a knife twisting deeper. They mumbled apologies, excuses, but I didn't listen. Their words were meaningless noise against the roar in my head. As the front door clicked shut behind them, the silence of the apartment crashed over me. I stood there staring at the empty bed, the imprint of their betrayal still warm on the sheets. My fingers curled into fists, nails digging into my skin. This wasn't just a breakup or a family fight. This was war. And I wasn't going to let them walk away unscathed. I didn't know how yet, but I'd make them feel every ounce of the pain they'd inflicted on me. Starting now. But where to begin? I was always the quiet one, the shadow in the corner of our family's chaotic spotlight. Growing up, it was Dana who commanded the room. Her laughter, her tantrums, her endless dramas that seemed to pull everyone into her orbit. I was Anna, the afterthought, the one who got good grades, stayed out of trouble, and never made waves. But no matter how high I climbed, how many awards I brought home, or how hard I tried to be seen, it was always Dana's crises that mattered most. Her tears were a siren call, and our parents answered every time. I remember being 9, sitting at the kitchen table with my spelling bee trophy, its cheap gold plastic gleaming under the fluorescent light. I'd practiced for weeks, memorizing words like serendipity and cataclysm, until my tongue could twist around them without stumbling. I'd won first place, beating out kids 2 grades above me. I was so proud, clutching that trophy like it could anchor me to something solid. Mom glanced at it, gave a distracted, "That's nice, Anna," and went back to soothing Dana, who was sobbing because some boy in her class had called her hair frizzy. Dad didn't even look up from his newspaper. The trophy sat on the table until dinner, when it was pushed aside to make room for Dana's plate. That night, I hid it under my bed, where it wouldn't be in anyone's way. It wasn't just that moment. It was every moment. Dana's fights with friends, her breakups, her slammed doors, they were the pulse of our household. My perfect report cards, my science fair projects, my quiet dreams of being a writer, they were background noise, barely audible over the storm of Dana's life. I tried to understand it. She was older, 16 to my 12 by the time I started noticing the pattern, and her problems seemed bigger, more urgent. A broken heart felt heavier than a spelling bee win, I guess. But deep down, I knew it wasn't just that. Dana was the sun, and I was a distant planet, orbiting in the dark. I learned to be invisible. I'd slip into my room with a book, writing stories in notebooks I never showed anyone. In those pages, I was bold, heroic, the center of my own universe. But in the real world, I was the one who cleaned up after Dana's messes, literally and figuratively. When she'd trash the living room after a fight with Mom, I'd pick up the thrown pillows and broken mugs. When she'd storm out, leaving Mom in tears, I'd make tea and listen to Mom vent about how hard it was to raise a daughter like Dana. Never once did she ask about me. By high school, I'd built a life outside their chaos. I joined the debate team, wrote for the school paper, and found friends who saw me for me. But even then, the shadow lingered. I'd come home buzzing from a debate win, only to find Dana screaming about some new catastrophe, a failed audition, a totaled car, a betrayal by a best friend. My victories were swallowed whole. Once I made the mistake of mentioning my article in the school paper at dinner. Dana rolled her eyes, said, "God, Anna, nobody cares about your boring newspaper." And Mom shushed her but didn't disagree. I stopped bringing it up after that. I don't think I hated Dana, not exactly. I loved her, in the way you love someone because they're family, because you share blood and history. But love doesn't erase resentment. It grew like a weed in my chest, tangled and thorny, every time I watched her steal the air from the room. I started wondering if I was invisible because I wasn't enough. Too quiet, too plain, too unremarkable to compete with her wildfire energy. The thought gnawed at me, kept me up at night, whispering that I'd never be seen. Then came the summer before my senior year. I was 17 and Dana was 20, home from college with a new crisis every week. I'd just gotten accepted into a prestigious writing program, a chance to spend 6 weeks at a university, learning from real authors. It was my dream, my ticket out of the shadows. I told Mom and Dad at dinner, my hands shaking as I handed them the acceptance letter. They smiled, said they were proud. For one brief moment, I felt seen, but then Dana walked in, tears streaming, her voice breaking as she announced she'd been dumped again. The letter was forgotten, left on the table like my trophy years before. That night, something in me snapped. I wasn't going to stay invisible anymore. But how do you make a family see you when they've spent a lifetime looking away? The rain was relentless that night, hammering against the windows of our old Victorian house like it was trying to break through. I sat on the edge of my bed, staring at the family photo on my nightstand. Mom, Dad, Dana, and me, all smiles at last year's 4th of July barbecue. The memory felt like a lie now, a glossy veneer over a truth I couldn't unsee. Dana, my sister, my confidant, had betrayed me. And Ethan, the man I'd loved for 3 years, had been her accomplice. Their affair was a blade in my chest, and the wound was still raw. I could still hear Mom's voice from earlier that day, soft but insistent, like she was coaxing a child to eat their vegetables. Anna, you're the strong one. You always have been. Forgive them. We're family, and families don't break. Her words stung, not because they were cruel, but because they were so painfully earnest. She believed forgiveness was a switch I could flip, a way to stitch our fractured family back together. Dad was worse. He didn't say much, just gave me that look, the one that said I was being dramatic for holding on to my hurt. They wanted me to play the peacemaker, to smile and nod, and pretend my heart wasn't shredded. I stood and paced the room, my bare feet cold against the hardwood. The house was too quiet, the kind of quiet that amplifies every creak, every whisper of your own thoughts. I kept replaying the moment I found out, walking into Dana's apartment unannounced, seeing Ethan's jacket slung over her couch, the wine glasses, the way their laughter stopped when they saw me. Dana's face had crumpled, but not with guilt, with relief, like she'd been carrying a secret too heavy to bear. Ethan just looked away, his jaw tight, like he was already building a wall between us. I wanted to hate them both, to let the anger burn clean through me, but it wasn't that simple. Dana was my sister, the one who'd braided my hair for prom, who'd stayed up with me until dawn when Grandma died. Ethan was the man who'd brought me coffee every Sunday morning, who'd promised me forever just 3 months ago. How do you hate the people who've woven themselves into your life so deeply that cutting them out would unravel you too? The phone buzzed on my nightstand, pulling me out of my spiral. It was a text from Mom. Dinner tomorrow at 6. Dana will be there. Please come. My stomach twisted. The idea of sitting across from Dana, of passing her the mashed potatoes like nothing had happened, made me want to scream. But Mom's plea was clear. Show up, be the bigger person, keep the family intact. I tossed the phone onto the bed without replying. I wandered to the window, pressing my forehead against the cool glass. The street below was empty, the street lights casting halos in the rain. I wondered what Dana was doing right now. Was she crying? Was she with Ethan, pretending I didn't exist? The thought of them together sent a fresh wave of pain through me, but beneath it was something else. Curiosity, maybe, or desperation to understand why. Why had she done this? Why hadn't I seen it coming? I turned back to the photo on my nightstand. Dana's smile was wide, her arms slung around my shoulders. I wanted to believe that smile was real, that she hadn't been plotting to hurt me even then. But doubt gnawed at me, a quiet voice whispering that I'd been blind, that I'd trusted too easily. I picked up the frame, my thumb brushing over the glass, and for a moment I considered smashing it. Instead, I set it down gently, like it was made of porcelain. The clock on my wall ticked past midnight. I hadn't slept properly in days, my dreams haunted by fragments of Dana's apologies and Ethan's silence. Tomorrow's dinner loomed like a storm cloud, and I didn't know if I could face it. Could I sit there, play the role of the strong one, and forgive them just to keep the peace? Or would I finally let the anger spill out, consequences be damned? I crawled into bed, pulling the covers over my head, but sleep felt miles away. The rain kept falling, and I lay there, wondering if I'd ever feel whole again. I stepped off the plane in Indianapolis, the air heavy with late summer humidity, my suitcase wheels clattering against the terminal floor. The city was supposed to be my fresh start, a clean break from the jagged edges of my past. The promotion at the marketing firm had been a lifeline, a chance to rebuild after Ethan's betrayal with Dana. I'd imagined distance would dull the ache, that 800 miles would be enough to outrun the memories of their laughter, their stolen glances, the way they'd rewritten my life without my consent. But as I settled into my new apartment, a one-bedroom with bare walls and a view of a quiet street, I felt the weight of their shadows still lingering. The first few weeks were a blur of meetings, client pitches, and learning the rhythm of a new office. My colleagues were friendly enough, their Midwestern warmth a contrast to the sharp edges of my old life in Chicago. I threw myself into work, staying late to tweak campaigns, hoping exhaustion would drown out the thoughts that crept in at night. But alone in my apartment, the silence was loud. I'd scroll through my phone, fingers hovering over Ethan's contact, now just a ghost in my blocked list. Dana's face would flash in my mind, her perfect smile, the way she'd always known how to steal the room. I hated how much space they still occupied in my head. One evening, my cousin Sarah called, her voice bright and insistent. A family reunion was happening in 2 weeks just outside the city. She'd heard I'd moved and wouldn't take no for an answer. "It's time to reconnect," she said. "You can't hide forever." I wanted to argue, to tell her I wasn't ready to face the extended family, their questions, their pity. But Sarah had a way of making refusal feel like betrayal, so I agreed, promising myself I'd keep it short. A quick appearance, some small talk, then back to my fortress of solitude. The day of the reunion arrived, a Saturday drenched in golden light. I drove to the sprawling park where it was held, my stomach nodding with each mile. The lot was packed with cars, and I could hear laughter and music spilling from the pavilion. I smoothed my dress, checked my reflection in the rearview mirror, and told myself I could do this. Just smile, nod, and leave. But as I stepped into the crowd, my eyes caught a familiar silhouette near the picnic tables. Ethan. His arm was around Dana, her head tilted back in a laugh that echoed like a slap. My breath caught, my heart slamming against my ribs. They weren't supposed to be here. Sarah appeared at my side, her smile too wide, too practiced. "Surprise," she said, her voice dripping with false innocence. "We thought it'd be good for everyone to clear the air." My mouth went dry, words failing me. This wasn't a reunion. It was an ambush. I scanned the crowd, seeing aunts and cousins watching, their expressions a mix of curiosity and discomfort. They knew. They all knew about Ethan and Dana, about the engagement I'd learned of through a cruel group chat message 6 months ago. And now, here they were, flaunting their happiness like a trophy I was meant to admire. I wanted to run, to disappear back to my car, but my feet felt glued to the grass. Dana turned, her eyes locking with mine. For a moment, I thought I saw a flicker of guilt, but it vanished as she waved, her diamond ring catching the sunlight. Ethan followed her gaze, his face unreadable, and I felt the ground tilt beneath me. Every conversation I'd rehearsed in my head, every cutting remark, every plea for closure, dissolved into a haze of humiliation. Why had Sarah done this? Why had I come? I forced a smile, my hands trembling as I grabbed a drink from a nearby table, the plastic cup cold against my palm. I needed to stay calm, to play the part of the unaffected ex, but inside, I was unraveling. The chatter around me blurred into noise, and I caught snippets of Dana's voice, bright and carefree, as she told some story to a group of cousins. I stood there, alone in the crowd, wondering how I'd survive the day without breaking. And then Ethan started walking toward me. I stood in line at Starbucks, the familiar hum of chatter and espresso machines filling the air, but my mind was elsewhere. My cousin Emily had texted me that morning, her words bright and coaxing. Meet me for coffee. Just us, like old times. I hadn't seen her in months, not since the last family gathering turned sour. Her invitation felt like a lifeline, a chance to reconnect with someone who'd once been my confidant. The scent of roasted beans grounded me as I scanned the room, spotting her at a corner table, waving with that wide, disarming smile of hers. When I reached her, she stood to hug me, her perfume sharp and floral, stirring memories of childhood summers. We ordered, my usual flat white, her caramel macchiato, and settled into the worn leather chairs. For a moment, it was like nothing had changed. She laughed about her new job, her voice bubbling with the same energy that used to pull me into her orbit. I let myself relax, sipping my coffee, letting the warmth spread through me. But then her tone shifted, her eyes flickering with something guarded. Anna, there's something I need to talk about, she said, stirring her drink slowly. My stomach tightened. I knew that look. It wasn't just Emily sitting across from me anymore. It was the family, their expectations, their weight. Your mum's been struggling since you stopped coming around. We all miss you. Her words were soft, but they landed like a rehearsed script. I set my cup down, the ceramic clinking against the table. This wasn't a casual catch-up. This was an ambush. I tried to keep my voice steady. Emily, I didn't stop coming around for no reason. You know what happened. My mind flashed to the last family dinner. My mother's sharp words, my uncle's dismissive sneer when I tried to set boundaries, the way they all closed ranks when I dared to push back. I'd spent years bending to their demands, swallowing my anger to keep the peace. But that night, I'd walked away, promising myself I wouldn't let them pull me back into their cycle of guilt and control. Emily's eyes softened, but I saw the calculation behind them. They're not perfect, Anna, but they're family. They want to make things right. Your mom especially, she's been crying for weeks. Her words stung, and for a moment I wavered. I pictured my mother, her face crumpled, her voice breaking. But then I remembered the other times, the apologies that never held, the promises that dissolved the moment I let my guard down. This wasn't reconciliation. It was manipulation dressed up as love. I leaned back, crossing my arms. If she's so sorry, why isn't she here? Why send you to do the talking? Emily's smile faltered, and I knew I'd hit a nerve. She opened her mouth, then closed it, her fingers tightening around her cup. She thought you'd listen to me, she said finally, her voice quieter now. We just want you back. Back? I echoed, my voice sharper than I intended. Back to what? To pretending everything's fine while they walk all over me? I'm done, Emily. The words felt like a release, but they left a hollow ache in my chest. I wanted to believe her, to believe in the family I'd once thought was my safe haven. But I'd learned the hard way that love shouldn't feel like a battlefield. Emily's eyes glistened, but I couldn't tell if it was genuine or part of the act. Anna, you're breaking their hearts. You're breaking mine. Her voice cracked, and for a second I felt the old pull, the guilt that had kept me tethered to them for so long. But then I saw it. The way her words mirrored my mother's, the same playbook they'd always used. I wasn't falling for it again. I stood, my chair scraping against the floor. I'm not the one breaking anything, I said, my voice low but firm. If they want me in their lives, they need to respect me. Until then, I'm done. I grabbed my bag, my heart pounding as I turned toward the door. Emily called my name, her voice sharp with desperation, but I didn't look back. The bell above the door chimed as I stepped into the cool evening air, my breath catching. I'd walked away, but something told me this wasn't over, not by a long shot. I stepped off the bus in Indianapolis, the air thick with summer heat, and the faint hum of a city I didn't know. My suitcase, battered and barely holding together, felt heavier than it should have, like it carried the weight of every choice that led me here. I was 26, running from a life that had unraveled back in Chicago, parents who didn't understand me, a job that drained my soul, and a relationship that left scars I couldn't see but felt every day. This was my fresh start, or so I told myself, standing on a cracked sidewalk with no plan and a dwindling bank account. The city buzzed around me, alive in a way that felt foreign. Cars honked, streetlights flickered, and people moved with purpose, their lives stitched together in ways mine wasn't. I found a diner a few blocks from the bus station, its neon sign blinking like a heartbeat. Inside, the smell of coffee and grease wrapped around me, comforting in its familiarity. I slid into a booth, ordered a black coffee, and let the world settle for a moment. The waitress, an older woman with kind eyes, called me Hon and left me to my thoughts. I didn't know what I was looking for. Freedom, maybe. A place to belong. I'd always been the odd one out, too quiet for my loud family, too dreamy for the corporate grind. In Chicago, I'd felt like a ghost, drifting through spaces that didn't see me. Indianapolis wasn't a dream destination. It was just far enough to feel like escape without being unreachable. I had a lead on a waitressing job and a cheap room in a boarding house. It wasn't much, but it was mine. Days turned into weeks. The boarding house was a creaky old place, full of people like me, lost, searching, or just passing through. I got the waitressing job at a bar downtown, a gritty spot where locals gathered to drown their days. The work was hard, but I liked the rhythm of it, taking orders, pouring drinks, listening to stories. It was there I met Hunter. He came in every Thursday, always alone, always with a book. He had a quiet intensity, his dark eyes scanning pages like they held secrets. One night he left his book behind, a worn copy of The Great Gatsby. I kept it safe behind the counter, and when he returned the next week, I handed it back. "You read it?" he asked, his voice low, almost cautious. "Parts," I lied. I'd read it cover to cover that night, staying up until dawn, lost in the longing of it all. We talked for hours after my shift, the bar emptying around us. He was a carpenter, building homes for people who could afford them, though he lived in a small apartment with his dog, Max. He spoke about wood, like it was poetry, about the way it held stories in its grain. I told him about Chicago, about feeling invisible. He listened like he saw me, really saw me, and it stirred something I hadn't felt in years. We started meeting outside the bar, walks through the city, coffee in quiet cafes, evenings by the White River where fireflies danced. Hunter had a way of making the world feel softer, like he could sand down its rough edges. He told me about his sister, Lily, and her two kids, how they were his anchor after his parents passed. I met them one Sunday at a park, Lily's warmth pulling me in like I was already family. Her kids tugged at my hands, asking me to push them on the swings, and for the first time I felt like I belonged somewhere. But belonging scared me. I'd built walls so high I didn't know how to let them down. Hunter was patient, but I could see the questions in his eyes when I pulled away, when my silences stretched too long. One night, as we sat on his couch, Max curled up between us. Hunter reached for my hand. His touch was steady, grounding, but it made my chest tighten. What if I let him in and it all fell apart? What if I wasn't enough? I'm not good at this, I whispered, my voice shaking. At staying? He looked at me, his gaze unwavering. You don't have to stay forever, Anna. Just stay tonight. I nodded, but as his fingers laced through mine, a shadow moved inside me. A fear I couldn't name, whispering that this warmth, this family, this love, it might not be mine to keep. I stood in the dim glow of the fireplace, the letter trembling in my hands. My father's jagged handwriting sprawled across the page, each word a shard of glass cutting deeper into wounds I thought had scarred over. The ink was black, but it might as well have been venom, dripping with accusations, resentment, and a twisted kind of love that felt more like a noose. I'd found it tucked inside an old book in my mother's attic, a place I hadn't visited in years, not since I'd left home at 19, vowing never to look back. But here I was, 32, staring at the past I'd tried to bury. The letter wasn't addressed to me, not exactly. It was to my mother, written years ago, before their divorce, before the family fractured like a dropped mirror. He wrote about me, though, about how I was ungrateful, how I'd shamed them by leaving, how my dreams of becoming a writer were childish fantasies that would ruin me. He called me selfish, a traitor to the family name. Each sentence was a brick in the wall he'd built to keep me small, to keep me his. I could almost hear his voice, low and deliberate, the way it used to pin me in place during his lectures at the dinner table. My chest tightened, a familiar ache spreading like wildfire. I'd come to the attic to sort through my mother's things after her sudden death 2 months ago. A heart attack, the doctors said, but I knew better. Her heart had been breaking for years, worn thin by my father's cruelty and my brother's betrayal. I hadn't spoken to either of them in over a decade, not since the night I walked out, my suitcase barely zipped, my heart pounding with equal parts fear and freedom. I thought I'd escaped, built a life in a new city, with a small apartment and a job writing for a local magazine. It wasn't glamorous, but it was mine. Yet here, in this dusty attic, the past was clawing me back. The letter wasn't the only thing I found. There were photos, yellowed and curling at the edges, of us as a family, smiling, pretending. There was my brother, Ethan, grinning beside me at a picnic, his arms slung over my shoulders. We were close once, or so I thought, until he chose our father's side, echoing his venom, calling me a fool for leaving. The betrayal stung worse than anything, because Ethan had been my confidant, my ally. I'd trusted him with my secrets, my fears, only to watch him weaponize them against me. I shoved the photos back into the box, my hands shaking. I read the letter again, though it hurt to do so. My father's words twisted the knife. Anna thinks she's better than us, but she'll crawl back when she fails. He was wrong. I hadn't failed, not yet, but the doubt he planted years ago still lingered, a shadow I couldn't outrun. I wanted to scream, to tear the letter to shreds, but instead, I found myself walking to the fireplace. The flames were low, embers glowing like dying stars. I held the letter over them, watching the edges curl as the heat licked the paper. This was my chance to let it go, to burn away the weight of their judgment. But as the flames caught, a memory flashed. My mother's voice, soft and broken, begging me to stay that night I left. "You don't understand what you're leaving behind," she'd said, tears in her eyes. I hadn't listened, too angry, too desperate to escape. Now with her gone, I wondered what she'd meant. Had she known about this letter? Had she kept it to protect me, or to remind herself of the man she'd loved despite everything? The paper blackened, curling into ash, but the questions remained heavy and unanswered. I dropped the burning letter into the fire, watching it disintegrate. The act felt final, cleansing, but it wasn't enough. Something else was up here, hidden in these boxes, in this house. I could feel it, a truth I wasn't sure I was ready to face. As the last of the letter disappeared, I turned back to the attic, my heart pounding. What else had my mother left behind? And why did it feel like she was still trying to tell me something? I never thought I'd end up here, sitting in a dimly lit diner across from my brother Mark, feeling like a cornered animal. My heart was pounding so hard I could hear it over the clink of coffee cups and the hum of late-night chatter. He'd called me 2 days ago, voice trembling, begging me to meet him. "Anna, it's urgent. I need you. We all do," he'd said, and like a fool, I believed him. I thought maybe, just maybe, after years of distance, my family wanted to make things right. But as I stared at Mark's shifty eyes, avoiding mine while he fidgeted with a sugar packet, I knew something was off. This wasn't a reconciliation. This was an ambush. I hadn't seen most of my family in over 5 years, not since I walked away from the constant drama, the guilt trips, and the way they always made me feel like I owed them something. I'd built a life for myself, nothing extravagant, but stable. A modest job as an accountant, a small apartment, a quiet routine. It wasn't much, but it was mine. Growing up, I was the responsible one, the fixer, the person who paid for Mum's medical bills when she refused to get insurance, who bailed Dad out of debt more times than I could count. I was done being their safety net. So when I cut contact, it felt like I'd finally taken a breath after years of drowning. But Mark's call dragged me right back under. "Anna, thanks for coming," he started, his voice low, almost rehearsed. "I know things have been complicated, but we've been talking, me, Mom, Dad, even Aunt Linda. We miss you. We want you back in our lives." His words sounded sincere, but there was a crack in his tone, a nervousness that made my skin crawl. I leaned back in the booth, crossing my arms, trying to read him. The diner smelled like stale coffee and grease, and the flickering fluorescent light above us only heightened the tension. I wanted to believe him. I really did. But I'd heard these apologies before, always followed by a but or a request. "Mark, just get to the point," I said, sharper than I meant to. My fingers tightened around the handle of my untouched coffee mug. "What do you really want? Because I didn't drive 2 hours in the middle of the night for empty promises." He flinched, and for a moment I felt a pang of guilt. Mark was always the softer one, the sibling who tried to keep the peace while I fought every battle. But even he had his limits, and I'd seen him side with our parents when it suited him. Trust was a luxury I couldn't afford anymore. He sighed, running a hand through his thinning hair. "Okay, fine. Look, we're in trouble. Big trouble. Dad's business went under last year, and Mum's health, it's bad. Real bad. We've got debts piling up, medical bills, loans we can't pay back. We thought, well, we hoped you could help. Just this once." There it was, the real reason I was here. Not love, not family, not even an apology. They needed money. Again. My stomach churned, a mix of anger and disbelief. I'd spent years rebuilding myself, clawing my way out of their chaos, and here they were, dragging me back in. Help how exactly? I asked, my voice low, barely containing the storm brewing inside me. I could feel my face heating up, my pulse racing. Mark hesitated, and I knew whatever came next would be worse. We need a loan, Anna. Or maybe you could co-sign on something. You've got a good job, right? Stable credit? It wouldn't be forever, just until we get back on our feet. His words hit me like a slap. Co-sign. Risk my own financial security for their mess. I stared at him, searching for any sign of shame, but all I saw was desperation. They hadn't changed, not one bit. I wanted to stand up and walk out right then, to leave him with the bill and the bitter taste of rejection. But something kept me glued to that cracked vinyl seat. Maybe it was the tiny, stupid part of me that still hoped for something different. Or maybe it was the realization that this wasn't just Mark's idea. This was a plan, a coordinated effort. My whole family was in on it, waiting somewhere in the shadows for the outcome of this conversation. And as that thought settled in, a chill ran down my spine. What would they do if I said no? I've always believed family is supposed to be your safe harbor, the place you return to when the world feels too heavy. But as I stood in my childhood home, staring at the faces of the people who raised me, I realized I'd been clinging to a lie. My name's Anna, and this is the story of how I uncovered the real motive behind my family's sudden warmth after years of cold distance, a motive so calculated it shattered everything I thought I knew. Growing up, I was the odd one out. My parents and siblings seemed to share an unspoken bond, one I could never quite penetrate. I was the dreamer, the one who left our small town for the city, chasing a career in public relations. It wasn't easy, but I built a life I'm proud of. Connections with influential people, a stable income, and a sense of independence I'd never felt at home. Meanwhile, my family stayed rooted, running a struggling hardware store that barely kept the lights on. We drifted apart over the years, our conversations reduced to polite holiday exchanges. So, when my mother called me out of the blue last month, her voice dripping with an unfamiliar sweetness, I was caught off guard. Anna, darling, we've missed you so much, she cooed through the phone. Why don't you come home for a visit? We'd love to catch up. Her words felt rehearsed, but I pushed the suspicion aside. Maybe they'd finally realized how distant we'd become. Maybe this was their way of mending things. I agreed to spend a long weekend with them, packing my bags with a fragile hope that this could be a fresh start. When I arrived, the house smelled of nostalgia, roasted chicken and lavender, the same scents from my childhood. My parents greeted me at the door with smiles so wide they looked painted on. My older brother Mark and my sister Lisa were there too, their laughter echoing through the living room, as if we'd never spent a decade barely speaking. It was surreal, almost too perfect. They asked about my life in the city, my job, my friends, questions they'd never bothered with before. I answered cautiously, feeling a strange undercurrent beneath their enthusiasm, like actors waiting for their cue. That first night, we sat around the dinner table, passing mashed potatoes and memories. My father raised a glass, his eyes glinting with something I couldn't place. To family, he toasted, and to new beginnings. Everyone cheered, but I noticed the way Mark exchanged a quick glance with Lisa, a silent message I wasn't meant to decode. My stomach churned, though I couldn't pinpoint why. Was I just imagining things, projecting my own insecurities onto their kindness? The next morning, I woke to hushed whispers filtering through the walls. Creeping down the hallway, I caught fragments of a conversation between my parents. If she agrees, we're saved, my mother murmured, her tone urgent. Her connections could turn this around, my father added. My heart thudded against my ribs. Were they talking about me? What did they mean by connections? I retreated to my room before they could notice me, my mind racing with possibilities. I wanted to confront them, to demand answers, but a part of me feared the truth would be uglier than the uncertainty. As the day wore on, their behavior grew more transparent. Mark casually mentioned how the store was on the brink of foreclosure, how they'd exhausted every option. Lisa dropped hints about how someone with my network could probably pull strings with local investors or big clients. My mother kept touching my arm, her smiles laced with expectation. It was like a puzzle snapping together, each piece revealing a picture I didn't want to see. They weren't reaching out to reconnect. They were reaching for a lifeline. I was their bailout plan, nothing more. By evening, I felt suffocated by their unspoken demands. I needed air, space to think, so I slipped outside to the porch, staring at the fading sunset. That's when I heard the creak of the screen door behind me. Turning, I saw my father, his expression a mix of hope and desperation. "Anna, we need to talk about something important," he started, his voice low. My pulse quickened. This was it. The moment they'd drop the facade and reveal what they really wanted from me. But was I ready to hear it? The ink on the documents felt like it carried the weight of my entire life. I sat at the polished oak table in my father's law office, the air thick with the scent of old books and leather. My hands trembled as I gripped the pen, its cold metal grounding me against the storm inside. Each signature was a deliberate act, a carving of my name into a future I could scarcely imagine. Anna Marie Sorensen. The loops and lines felt foreign, as if I was signing for someone else's freedom, not mine. My father, Hunter's father, stood across from me, his grey eyes steady but soft, like he was seeing me for the first time in years. He'd always been a towering figure, stern, unyielding, but today he was just my dad, fighting for me in the only way he knew how, with law, with logic, with love buried beneath layers of formality. The documents were a fortress, each clause a brick in the wall between me and the life I was leaving behind. A marriage that had started with promises of forever, but unraveled into control, silence, and fear. Ethan's shadow still loomed, even here, in the sterile safety of this office. I could almost hear his voice, low and measured, telling me I'd never survive without him. But I was surviving. I was signing. I was choosing myself. My father slid another paper toward me, his voice calm but deliberate. "This is the final one, Anna. Once you sign, it's done. You're free." Free. The word felt like a stranger's language, beautiful but unreachable. I looked at the page, a labyrinth of legal jargon that promised emancipation but demanded precision. One wrong move, one missed signature, and I could be dragged back into Ethan's orbit. My heart pounded as I scanned the text, the words blurring under the weight of what they meant. I wasn't just signing papers, I was signing away a version of myself I'd never mourn. The pen scratched against the paper, and I felt a surge of something. Relief, maybe, or defiance. It wasn't just ink. It was a declaration. My own revolution written in black and white. I glanced at my father, expecting his usual stoic nod, but instead he smiled, a rare, fleeting thing that cracked the armor of his professionalism. "You're doing the right thing," he said, and for once I believed him. Not because he was my lawyer, but because he was my father, and he'd seen the bruises, both the ones on my skin and the ones I carried inside. The office clock ticked, each second a reminder that time was moving forward, carrying me with it. I signed the last page and set the pen down, my fingers aching from the grip. The room felt brighter, the air less heavy, but my chest tightened with a new kind of fear. Freedom wasn't just a word, it was a void, vast and uncharted. What did it mean to be Anna without Ethan's rules, without his voice in my head? I'd spent so long surviving him that I'd forgotten how to live for myself. My father gathered the papers, his movements precise, almost ceremonial. He'd fought for me in courtrooms and late-night strategy sessions, piecing together a case that turned Ethan's control into evidence, his charm into a weapon. But this moment wasn't about him or Ethan. It was about me. I stood, my legs unsteady, and walked to the window. The city stretched out below, a maze of lights and lives, each one a story I'd never know. I wondered if mine could be one of them now, a story of starting over. I turned back to my father, ready to thank him, but his phone buzzed, sharp and insistent. He glanced at the screen and his face shifted. Concern, not surprise. "Anna," he said, his voice low, "we need to talk about Ethan. He's filed a counterclaim." My breath caught, the room tilting slightly. A counterclaim. Ethan wasn't letting go that easily. The papers, my signatures, my declaration, they were supposed to be my shield. But as my father's words sank in, I realized this wasn't the end. It was only the beginning of a fight I hadn't expected to face so soon. The sun dipped below the horizon, casting a golden haze over the garden I'd carved from the stubborn earth. My hands, calloused and stained with soil, gripped the trowel as I planted the last of the marigolds. Their vibrant petals seemed to pulse with life, a quiet defiance against the weight of the world I'd left behind. A year ago, I was Anna, the woman drowning in debt, in a city that chewed up dreams and spat out husks. Now, here in this quiet corner of nowhere, I was something else. Someone new, tethered to the earth, and to the family I hadn't expected to find. The baby's cry cut through the evening air, sharp and insistent. I wiped my hands on my jeans and hurried inside, where Lila, my unexpected daughter, squirmed in her crib. At 6 months, she was a whirlwind of need and wonder, her tiny fists waving like she was conducting some secret symphony. I lifted her, her warmth against my chest, a reminder of how fragile this piece was. Mark, my partner, was in the kitchen, chopping vegetables with the same deliberate care he applied to everything. His hands steady, his presence a quiet anchor. We'd met a year ago, in the aftermath of my unraveling, when I'd fled the city with nothing but a duffel bag and a heart full of cracks. He'd offered me a room in his farmhouse, no questions asked, and somehow that kindness had bloomed into this, a family, a life. I settled Lila into her high chair, her gurgles softening as Mark slid a bowl of mashed peas her way. He caught my eye, his smile a mix of exhaustion and something deeper, something that made my chest ache. We didn't talk about the past much, but it lingered in the spaces between us. My bankruptcy, the creditors who'd hounded me, the life I'd imploded. I'd thought moving here would be temporary, a place to hide until I could rebuild. But the garden, the house, Mark, Lila, they'd become roots I hadn't planned on growing. The mail arrived as we ate, the clatter of the mailbox a faint echo from the road. I ignored it at first, focusing on Lila's messy attempts to feed herself. But Mark's glance toward the door held a question, and I knew what he was thinking. The notices had stopped months ago, the creditors giving up when they realized there was nothing left to take. Still, every delivery carried the ghost of that old fear. I pushed back my chair, the scrape loud in the quiet, and stepped outside. The envelope was there, nestled among seed catalogues and a flyer for the county fair. Its stark white paper and red-stamped urgency felt like a slap. Final notice, it read, the words blurring as my pulse quickened. I tore it open, my fingers clumsy, expecting another demand, another reminder of the life I'd failed. But this was different. A closure, a legal end to the bankruptcy that had haunted me. The debt was gone, dissolved into nothingness, like ash scattered on the wind. I stood there, the paper trembling in my hands, and felt something shift inside me. Not relief, not yet, but a quiet space where fear used to live. Back inside, Mark looked up, his knife paused mid-chop. Lila babbled, oblivious, her tiny hands smearing peas across her tray. I handed him the letter, my throat tight. He read it in silence, then set it down, his hand finding mine. "It's over," he said, his voice low, steady. But was it? The debt was gone, but the weight of it, the shame, the doubt, still clung to me, stubborn as weeds. I wanted to believe this was freedom, that the garden, the family, the life we were building could be enough. But as I looked out the window at the marigolds glowing in the dusk, a new fear crept in. What if this peace was fragile, a thing I could break with one wrong move? What if I wasn't enough to hold it together? The night deepened, and Lila's cries faded into sleep. Mark and I sat on the porch, the air thick with the scent of earth and blooming jasmine. The letter lay on the table between us, its edges curling in the breeze. I wanted to ask him if he believed in second chances, if he thought we could outrun the shadows of my past. But before I could speak, a sound broke the silence, a low, distant rumble, like thunder rolling in from the hills. It wasn't a storm, not yet, but it felt like a warning, a reminder that nothing stays still forever.